There comes a time in every marriage when the bloom is off the rose. It's not that the love is gone or that you hate each other, but things are just not new anymore. It can be the best time in the relationship for some couples and the worst for others. This can be a make or break point for marriages because you have to seriously look at things and decide whether or not you want to continue being married to that person. The term "it's cheaper to keep her" had to be coined by someone who had reached that point. It often comes roughly about the same time when you look at the person you fell in love with and married, only to realize that she's somehow been replaced by her mother, whom you hate. Her once feminine body has been upgraded and accessorized until you no longer recognize or even want it. At the same time, both your personalities and hers have evolved to the point where the thing you dreamed about when you met has come true. You are both truly and totally honest with each other. First off, we need to understand that, although we talk about it all the time and respect it, humans are simply not cut out for real honesty. We can't handle it. When you love someone, you almost have to lie to them, and do it regularly. We lie in 1,000 different ways, verbal being only one of them. But once we reach a certain age where we've become fully evolved, the ultimate version of ourselves, we simply no longer give a damn. We become so comfortable with who and what we are that we no longer feel it's worth the effort to pretend anymore. That's when the lying stops and the rubber meets the road. So, you let it all hang out. You're lazy, buy yourself a new couch. Your eyesight sucks, ditch the contacts and buy a bigger TV. You have no need to hide any of your imperfections from your partner anymore because you're married to her and you've been together for so long that you have to put up with each other anyway. Don't worry, guys, they do it too. For women, this is the time to throw away the push-up bras and stop wearing high heels. They've realized that all of the sexy underwear is just plain uncomfortable, and all you're going to do is take it off them to get what you want anyway. So, they buy 100 pairs of granny panties and dare you to say a word about it. Oh boy, let the good times roll. Anyway, I'm 54. Due to some great investments early on and a downturn in the auto industry, I'm retired. Thanks to my brilliance as an engineer and some patents I developed for my company, they can no longer afford to pay my salary. With my retirement package accruing trailing zeros, it became clear to some of the bean counters that the smarter thing for the company to do would be to offer me a buyout. It was a win-win situation. The company gives me a one-time payment in the upper single-digit millions, so I no longer have to work for the rest of my life. Booyah! On the other hand, they get to license my patents, clear the cost of my exorbitant mid-six-figure salary from their books, and hire a fresh new crop of engineers to breathe some much-needed life into the company. It was a good deal for everyone concerned. For the first year or so, before the inevitable boredom set in on my end, my wife loved the idea. We now had both the time and the money to do all of those things we never had the time or the money to do before. We started by downsizing our home and moving into a sparkling, modern, brand new condo. With our only offspring out on their own, we no longer needed a large house. That took us through the first 6 months. Then we started traveling the globe, which lasted another 6 months until we realized that no matter where you go, it's just another place where the people who live there are tired of it. We settled into the new condo, and familiarity began to breed what it usually does. I started to notice new things about my wife, Linda, that 30 years of marriage had failed to teach me. I mean, I still loved her, I just didn't like her. I think it was because we were simply spending too much time together. A day is 24 hours long. The average person spends 8 to 10 of those hours at work and about 8 of those hours sleeping. Add in travel time to and from destinations, along with different hobbies and activities, and it takes a big chunk out of your day. I suddenly realized that except for when we were on vacations, Linda and I only spent a few hours a day together. Now, all of a sudden, I was trapped with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until one of us died. I was also suddenly faced with the fact that we had nothing in common except our daughter and that Linda was either, to quote the Temptations, a ball of confusion or an utter disappointment. First off, let me begin by saying that I did not marry Linda because I thought she was brilliant. I married her because she was willing and good in bed, hotter than hell, and had a pleasing personality. Like most engineers, I had multiple reasons for the decision. I also considered that time might take one or maybe even 2 of those admirable qualities away from her. But even if any one of those was left, she'd still be worth spending time with. And I was wrong. As far as the sex goes, over time, she became more willing to use it against me. You know the story. If she wanted something and I didn't, she used sex to get her way. That worked for the first few years until I suddenly developed the ability to say no. Then she started saying no to me until she got her way. Sometime after the first 10 years, it just became easier to go without than to put up with her. So now, it was a case of only occasionally if we both wanted it. As for her being hot, I blew it there too. Linda was surprisingly beautiful when we met. She had a beautiful body, a tiny waist, and a nice size bum. There are lots of 50-year-old women out there who work at it and are still incredibly attractive. There are also lots of 50-year-old women who don't work at it and are blessed with good genetics, remaining very hot. Lastly, there are lots of 50-year-old women whose sexual appeal has nothing to do with their looks. They have a flirtatious nature or other skills that just make you want them anyway. Sadly, Linda fits into none of those categories. Over the years, she just let herself go. Her body and her looks went. When she was 25, Linda's measurements were 40-26-38, and I'm very proud to say she has the exact same measurements today. The problem isn't the numbers, though, it's the order. Linda still thinks she looks the same now, though, and you can't tell her any different. Part of our problem was that we were just different. I am in no way perfect. I overanalyze everything, am a slave to my schedule, and I'm sure that over the years, several of my pursuits and hobbies have taken precedence over my marriage. But hey, I try, and I've never cheated on her. I've always been an average-looking guy, so I had to work harder. I've exercised for most of my life, so now in my later years, I'm still fit and trim from daily workouts and runs. Linda, on the other hand, got her looks through genetics. Her body was a gift from God, so she didn't ever think she had to do anything to keep it up. That was one of our problems. When we traveled, I always needed to visit the gym in every hotel we stayed in because, as anyone will tell you, it's easier to stay in shape than to get back in shape. Linda always thought I shouldn't work out at all while we were on vacation. She hated my need to run in the morning or lift a few weights. She said it made her feel like we were on a schedule instead of truly free to just relax. On the other hand, I hated the fact that we couldn't do anything because of Linda's inability to walk for more than a block or two over flat ground. Her constant complaints about every new activity I proposed were met with comments like, "We can't do that, it takes too much energy," or "We can't do that, that's for kids." The last thing for me to discover about the love of my life was that her personality had degraded along with her body. Over the years, she became an expert on everything and a hypocrite at the same time. On one hand, she'd tell me that a woman can do anything a man can do. On the other hand, she'd say that since neither of us worked anymore, not that she ever had, we needed to split the household chores between us. I'm not a chauvinist, I was all for it. I would get up early and do my workout while Linda slept, then I'd start tackling all of my household duties. I'd do exactly half of what was on the list and leave the rest for her. She would conveniently get out of most of her share of the chores by saying that certain things were just not for women to do. One of those things, of course, was taking out the garbage. I don't know why women, who all swear they can do anything a man can do, find it so difficult to pick up a bag of household garbage and carry it to the can. It can't be the weight of it, because the average trash bag weighs less than 20 pounds and is mostly full of paper, wrappers, and discarded food. But Linda insisted that no woman should ever have to take out the garbage. She was sure there was a rule prohibiting it somewhere. Anyway, it was the garbage, out of everything else, that ended my marriage. It seems like such a stupid thing for two people who loved each other to draw a line in the sand over, but it was taking out the trash that ended us. Linda came in one Saturday morning and told me to take out the trash she had just finished filling up the cans with. I, of course, had just started watching one of my favorite track meets on TV. Being an avid runner, I liked watching the athletes who were the best in the world at the sport. Linda, who of course couldn't run a block if a pit bull was chasing her, didn't understand it. "Stan, I need you to take out the garbage right now," she said. It wasn't just the fact that she told me, not asked me, to do it, it was her tone of voice and her complete lack of respect for what I was doing. "No," I said. "It'll be a long time before you get any sex out of me if you don't." She sneered, "It's been a long time since I've gotten any sex out of you anyway." "I'll survive," I said. She got really angry for some reason and just stalked out. Since there were only the two of us in the house, we didn't create a ton of mess, so the bag wasn't even very full. The next thing I knew, she was glaring at me as she stomped by with the bag. She was back within 5 minutes, still glaring at me. But that was how it started. Things got very cold between us for about a week, and then suddenly she made up with me. I don't know why or how, it was seemingly, at least to me, spontaneous. It was as if we'd never been angry. I hadn't been, anyway, she'd been the one who was pissed off. Maybe she just decided that it was stupid and decided to let it go. I did start to feel guilty about it after we made up, but since things were going well between us, I didn't want to push it. The funny thing was that when I tried to take out the garbage, she wouldn't let me anymore. She'd just fly off the handle and grab the bags out of my hands. "I see what's going on," I said. "You're still pissed at me." "No, Stanley," she said, kissing me on the forehead. "I'm not angry at you. I've got it." I said, "You just don't want me to take out the garbage because you still don't want to have sex with me." "Stanley, we can have sex whenever you want," she said. "Tonight probably isn't very good unless you let me take a shower first." I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't like Linda to just give up on something. Over the next few days, my guilt motivated me more than anything else did. With Valentine's Day coming up, I decided to splurge and buy Linda the diamond bracelet she'd been eyeing in the jewelry ads. I even went above and beyond and increased the carat weight. I spent almost $3,000 on a bracelet that I was sure she'd love. I also planned a night out at our favorite restaurant, arranged for flowers, and the whole 9 yards. This would be a Valentine's Day to remember. I didn't wait until the last minute either. We still had over a week before Valentine's Day arrived. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was actually proud that, for once, I hadn't slipped out on Valentine's Day morning and bought her the first cheapest thing I could find. For once, I wouldn't tell her that we'd had so many Valentine's Days together that if she didn't know I loved her by now, there was something wrong with her. The thing was, I guess I'd started rethinking everything. Sure, her looks hadn't gotten any better, but her attitude had definitely improved, and like I said before, the love was still there. But Linda being nicer and just letting some of our arguments go gave me a reason to like her again. One of the things I'd noticed was that, over the past few weeks, we started to produce a lot more garbage. It used to be that we only had to take out the trash once or twice a week. Now it was at least 3 or 4 times a week. The other thing that was odd was that Linda seemed to be gone a lot longer than it took just to walk out behind the building and drop a bag into the large dumpsters back there. When it was time to take out the garbage the day before Valentine's Day, I decided to do it for her. She made a huge stink about it. I had to listen to the whole "women can do anything a man can do" speech, so I decided to just let it go. I turned on the television and started looking for something to watch. Linda grabbed the trash bags and headed out the door. I cracked the door open and watched as she turned the corner at the end of the hall. I quickly ducked down the stairway at the other end of the hall and headed out to the back myself. I hoped that I didn't miss her since it was kind of dark out there. Actually, I was quicker than she was and got there before she made the trip. Those daily runs had me in great shape. I saw our building manager, Dino, out there doing something to that dirty BMW of his. The car was over 10 years old and in terrible shape, but he acted like it was something special. My 2010 Mustang GT looked and ran far better than his car ever did. Linda acted like his car was something special too. I think it was mostly because she hated my Mustang. I wondered what the hell Dino was doing back there, but I wasn't concentrating on him. I wanted to find out what the hell was so special about the garbage. Linda walked straight past the dumpster and over to Dino. He was a big fat slob of a guy. He leaned down and immediately unzipped his pants. Linda got down on her knees in the filth of the alley and got to work. Dino didn't waste any time. I can still remember every detail as if they were burned into my brain. I remember seeing him ravaging my wife. Dino grunted every time he thrust into her, and he was wheezing as if he were about to have a heart attack. Linda was the one moaning and urging him on. It seemed like forever, but it was actually only about 3 minutes before Dino stiffened and roared. Then he just pulled up his pants and walked away as if nothing had happened. I waited for Linda to go back into the building and then quickly ran up the stairs. I was too shocked to even think about what I had just seen. Linda came into the condo only seconds after I'd settled back in front of the TV. As she passed by me, she was normal, neither overly cheerful nor defensive. If I hadn't seen what I had just seen, I would never have suspected a thing. I guess what they say is true, women are much better at being sneaky than men. In fact, she was so much better at it than I was that she almost caught me. She brought me a drink from the fridge and then looked at me. "What's wrong, Stan?" she asked. I didn't take my eyes off the TV. "Nothing," I said, trying to force my voice to sound normal. "Then why are your cheeks wet?" "Have you been crying?" she asked. "Oh, that," I said. The Jamaicans beat us in the relay again. I was so excited that I accidentally flicked one of my fingers in my eye. I'm sure they're doping, but no one can prove it yet. She looked at me very closely. I think I'm going to take the Mustang out for a drive, I said. At night? She asked. Why not? I replied. Well, I was planning on taking a long, soothing bath first, but I was hoping we could. We could what? I asked. You know, she said, smiling. It's been a long time, honey. Sorry, I said. I'm not in the mood. And I wasn't. The only reason she wanted to be intimate was because she felt guilty about what she had just done. I didn't think I'd ever touch her again. I grabbed my favorite, comfortable old leather jacket and headed for the door. She just stood there with her mouth open. As I opened the door, she called out, Stan, do you want me to come with you? Why? I asked. You don't even like my car. I closed the door, both physically and metaphorically. In a physical sense, closing the door sealed our condo and prevented others from stealing or doing harm to its occupants and contents. Metaphorically speaking, I sealed my broken heart and decided that Linda would do no further harm to it or my well-being. As I walked toward the garage, I noticed Dahlia Martin, a beautiful young woman who lived in one of the units. She was tall and thin with long, flowing hair that begged for attention. I smiled and waved. She returned my wave half-heartedly. Dahlia was usually very friendly, so it caught my attention. I walked over to her. What's wrong? I asked. My stupid car won't start, she pouted. Normally, Dahlia worked from her condo, doing some kind of internet work, so if she was leaving, it must have been really important. Well, call your date and have him pick you up, I said. You're definitely worth it. You are the sweetest man ever, Mr. Laurel, she smiled. Dahlia obviously couldn't stay angry for more than 2 minutes. But this is for work. I have to go all the way downtown for a meeting to discuss changes in the rules and sign off on my yearly tax and insurance forms. Well, I'll take you then, I said. I'm just going out for a drive to clear my head, so it's no problem. When you're done, if you can't get a ride from a coworker, just call me, and I'll pick you up too. But that's too much trouble, she said. Honey, the thing about being old and retired is that since you never have anything to do, having anything to do is exciting, I said. Thank you so much, she said. Without you, I'd be in a lot of trouble. Don't mention it, I said. She took my arm as we walked over to my car. As I started the big V8, the car shook with the engine's vibration as if it were waking up from a long sleep. Within seconds, I backed out of my stall and left the building. Once we got on the freeway, it took me only 10 minutes to drive downtown. I followed her directions and put a waypoint in my GPS. There, I said. Why did you do that? She asked. In case you need me to pick you up, I'll be able to find this spot from wherever I am, I said. I have no idea where I'm going, she said. I'm sure I'll be able to find a ride, so I won't have to trouble you, she said. Dahlia, I'm an old man. Humor me. Give me your phone, I told her. She smiled and handed me her phone. I punched my number into it and called my iPhone, then handed her phone back. If you need me, you'll be able to call me now, I said. And it's really no trouble. She got out of the car and I drove off, heading back for the freeway. I love to just drive. I tend to stay on the freeway as opposed to the streets because I don't have to stop for traffic lights or pedestrians. I also like to drive fast. Usually, it's just me, my car, and my stereo, with no distractions between us. I took advantage of Arizona's perfect February temperatures and let the warm night breezes blow directly into my car. In exchange, I let the loud music from my stereo permeate the silence of the evening as we drove. It was all about numbers, a man in his 50s driving a car designed to look like it did 40 years ago, grieving for the end of his 30-plus-year marriage while listening to songs that were over 20 years old, with the volume cranked up to 10. Tonight, my album of choice was the Cult's Sonic Temple. Listening to American Horse helped me focus my rage and steel my heart against what was to come. It isn't easy to get past the hurt of discovering that someone you've loved, laughed, argued, and fought with for over 30 years had betrayed you. It really isn't easy, but it's not impossible either. I guess what made it possible was the fact that, as I've said before, I love her but I really don't like her. Maybe we had really grown apart over the years, and this was just her way of dealing with it. She turned to him for things she either didn't want from me anymore or thought I wasn't capable of giving her. I just couldn't figure out what those things were. Though I was in far better shape than Dino, despite his youth, I had far more financial resources and available time. The only thing I could think of was maybe he was just more willing to put up with her mood swings. But even that was hard to believe because when he was done with her, he just walked off. He got the wham and the bam but didn't even offer a thank you, ma'am. Maybe she loved him or vice versa, but I couldn't even see that because they didn't kiss, not once. She just walked up and started having sex. This obviously wasn't the first time they'd done this, their movements were too practiced. They had done this before, probably quite often. Then it hit me, this was why she was taking out the garbage so often now. She really thought she had me fooled, didn't she? I shook my head and laughed. I came to that realization just as Ian Astbury started singing the song's chorus. In my mind, I substituted "She's 40s" in the lyrics and sang along with Ian and Billy, "She's gone crazy, completely crazy, trying to tame the American horse." The she I sang about was, of course, Linda. My wife of all these years had flipped her lid if she thought I'd put up with all of this. And if she thought that being nice to me after weeks of treating me poorly over something as trivial as taking out the trash could somehow control me, then she was definitely crazy. Like the American horse in the song, I could not be tamed or controlled. I'd really started listening to the song because I'd always seen the American horse as a metaphor for my Mustangs. It was strange, though, how the song now reflected my feelings about my dying marriage. And dying it was. There was no way I intended to spend the rest of my life with a woman who neither loved nor respected me. Both she and Dino would get what they deserved. I took the next freeway exit and got back on in the opposite direction. I was heading for home with a new fire in my mind and a renewed steel in my backbone. Just as Firewoman came on my stereo, my foot pressed harder on the gas pedal. The more I pushed it down, the bigger my smile grew. In my mind, I started planning all the moves I'd make over the next few days. Each new idea heightened my pleasure until an electric shock went through my body. I slowed down quickly and pulled off onto the side of the road. I thought I was having a heart attack, but it was only my phone. My stereo was so loud I hadn't heard the ringing, only felt the vibrations. "Hello?" I said. "Mr. Laurel," sniffled Dahlia. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I really do need that ride." "I'll be right there, honey," I said. "Just wait for me by the front door where I dropped you off." I got back on the freeway and roared toward her location, with all thoughts of my own misery and revenge gone. Once again, I roared into the night, but this time I had a destination in mind. All thoughts about my own pain were banished, at least for a while. Dahlia had sounded awful over the phone, that wasn't like her. She was one of the most cheerful people I knew. I wondered what could have happened to upset her. As soon as I got off the freeway, I started the GPS and quickly followed its spoken directions. Within minutes, I was back at the building where I had dropped Dahlia off. She ran over to the car and got in as if she had just escaped some kind of nightmare. "Home?" I asked. "Yes, please," she said in a very tiny voice. We drove in silence, both lost in our thoughts. About 5 miles away from home, her hand shot out and held mine. I didn't say anything. I was glad to offer her some comfort. As I drove into the garage, she let out a sigh of relief for the first time since she'd gotten back into the car. "Thank you so much," she said. "It was nothing," I replied. I watched her walk away. She seemed very different from the confident, beautiful young woman I had seen only a few hours ago. She had somehow become a very frightened young girl. "Dahlia," I called after her. She turned to look at me. "If you need someone to talk to, I'm always available," I said. She nodded her head and headed for her condo. I considered leaving again but decided that more than anything else, I needed sleep. Tomorrow wouldn't be the busy day I'd envisioned. It wouldn't be filled with doing things with Linda, but it would be busy nonetheless. I went to my condo and opened the door. Linda was watching TV and smiled at me as I came in. I walked past her and went straight to bed. I couldn't figure out why she was smiling at me so much. It came to me a few minutes later. She wasn't smiling at me, she was laughing at me. She did that because she didn't think I knew. Now I understood why she'd been so nice to me lately. It was all one big joke to her. She'd ordered me to take out the garbage, and I'd refused, so she tried her favorite little game. She pulled out her no sex for Stanley card, and I called her bluff. I guess it was my way of showing her that her sex as a weapon game couldn't control me anymore. She had to find some way to win, so she decided to just do it behind my back. On the surface, she was being nice, but inside, she was probably thinking I'd beg her to take out the garbage before she was done. Meanwhile, she was giving what she should have been giving me to someone else as another form of punishment. Yep, it was one big joke, but we'd see who was laughing when the punchline came. That night, when Linda came to bed, she kept moving closer and closer to me, finally rubbing her legs against me. I pretended I was so deeply asleep that it didn't wake me. "Stanley," she said, "you must really be tired. You'll never know what you missed. I love you, Stanley." Yeah, I thought, I missed a chance at pity sex from a woman I no longer cared about. If this is your idea of love, screwing me after you've been with some greaseball, I'll stick with people who hate me. They treat me with more respect. I woke up the next morning and put on my running clothes. It was generally only a little chilly in the mornings, so I opted for running tights and a sweatshirt. Just as I was tying my laces, Linda woke up. "Stanley, you're awake," she said. "Yeah," I quipped. "I do that every morning, though I'm sure you wish I wouldn't." "What are you talking about, Stanley?" she asked. "I've loved you for over 30 years. Do you want me to make breakfast?" "Nope, I'm going out to run," I said. "Why don't you run on your treadmill?" she asked. "Because it's going to be a nice day," I said. "Stanley, we live in Arizona. Except for the middle of the summer, when the heat is ungodly, they're all nice days. Isn't there something you want to say or do?" I asked. "Yeah," I said. "See you when I get back." As I walked toward the door, she looked shocked. Suddenly, some of the pieces started to make sense. Maybe Linda was laughing at me because she didn't think I knew what a 304 she was. But there was something else too. Linda somehow knew about the bracelet I bought her. Then I realized it. One of her big-mouthed best friends worked at the jewelry store, so Linda probably knew about it before I brought the thing home. She might even know about the dinner too because I'd talked to the jewelry store owner about my plans. Well, screw her, she wasn't getting any more from me. No wonder she had been so busy trying to give me some of her dried-up old box. Now it made sense. Linda made sense, I thought as I ran, but the whole Valentine's Day thing didn't. Men were expected to go out and spend ridiculous amounts of money on candy, flowers, and jewelry just to get the same thing we get most nights anyway. What was the point? To show someone that we love them? Why not just say it? So does this mean that women don't love us, or is it just that they're so terribly insecure that we have to have a special day to prove it? I wondered if there was a Valentine's Day card for people you didn't love anymore. Maybe I should make them. I could probably get rich. As I ran around the park, I saw lots of other people out enjoying the sunshine too. There were walkers, skaters, bike riders, and other runners. There were different classifications of each. Some were just meandering through the park, more intent on enjoying the sunshine than anything else, but a few in each activity group were out for a serious workout. It was fun just watching the people go by and imagining things about them. There were some really nice-looking women out there, but most of them were far too young for me. I just wasn't the sugar daddy type, but in a way, I guess that was one of the things I'd need to start giving serious thought to when I was done with Linda. What would I do? I was only in my 50s. Although I'm no spring chicken, I'm still young enough to get married again. But after wasting most of my life on Linda, I wasn't sure that was even something I should think about. I did a quick, easy 5 miles, enjoying both the sunshine and the pleasantly cool early morning breezes. I also enjoyed people watching. I decided that from now on, unless the weather was bad or I was nursing an injury, I'd run outside. There was no use trying to stay with or spend time with a woman who was cheating on me. As I walked back towards my condo, I reviewed all the things I needed to do, see my lawyer about the divorce, handle some financial matters, and start looking for another condo or a small house. I was planning to either sell the one we were currently living in or just leave it for Linda. When I walked back in the door, Linda was cooking up a storm. She was acting more like it was Christmas than Valentine's Day. "Are you ready to eat, honey?" she asked, wearing a sheer robe with some incredible lingerie underneath. There was a camisole-like top that must have had a built-in girdle because it squeezed her waist in. She still looked fit but not as fat. She had put on makeup and done her hair too. "I'm going to take a shower and then go out for a while," I said. "Jimmy McDonald is retiring this week. I'm taking him to lunch along with some of the guys at the plant." "But Stanley, don't you remember what today is?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "It's Wednesday." "Stanley, today is Valentine's Day," she said, smiling. "Oh, yeah," I said. "Happy Valentine's Day." But to tell you the truth, it kind of slipped my mind. She looked at me in disbelief and then started smiling. Stanley, do you think I should wear something special later on? I mean, did you have plans to go out or something? Nope, I said. But if you want to go out, you can. Stanley, I was talking about us going out together, she said. You know, like maybe to a restaurant or a show or something. Oh, that's an idea, I said. But I think we'll have to wait until the weekend. All the good places are probably booked up by now because it's Valentine's Day. I went into the bathroom to shower, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. After I got out of the shower, I dressed and got ready to leave. My lawyer, Ollie, was an old friend. I was sure he'd see me without an appointment. I could hear Linda talking on the phone in the other room. Arlene, he's playing some kind of stupid game. I wish I could just tell him that I already know about the bracelet and the dinner. He's really enjoying himself this time. Yeah, I guess those little things are what spice things up when you've been together as long as we have. So, I'll let him have his fun. Oh, I've got to go. He's out of the shower. I waited for a few minutes and then loudly picked up my keys and opened the bedroom door. I walked into Ollie's office less than 20 minutes later. His secretary, an attractive brunette, looked up when I walked in. Mr. Hardy doesn't have any morning appointments that I know of, she said. Let me tell him you're here. She got up and walked into Ollie's office, leaving me to sit there and contemplate how youth was wasted on the young. She ushered me into Ollie's office and asked if I'd like any refreshment. I just smiled and told her I was fine. I found Ollie inside his large office, playing with one of those putting trainers. It's not going to help you, idiot, I said. You can barely drive the ball 80 yards on a good day. Improving your putting isn't the problem. You need to work out and get some strength back into those arms. Shut the hell up, Stanley, he smirked. Just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you can come over here and harass hard-working people while they're doing theirs. Oh, please excuse me, I said sarcastically. I didn't know I was in the office of Oliver Hardy, professional golfer. I thought this was my crooked lawyer's office. So, what do you need this crooked lawyer to do, sir? He asked with exaggerated formality. He hadn't taken his eye off his golf ball since I entered. He lined up his shot and lifted his club. Just arrange my divorce, I said. Just as he swung the club, his shock at what I said caused him to swing much harder than he intended. The ball rocketed across the floor, bounced off the ramp built into his putting green, and flew across the room. It bounced off and cracked the LCD computer monitor on his desk. What? He said. Oliver had been the best man at my wedding. He'd been to my house so often that it was almost as if he lived there too. He was my daughter's godfather and the executor of my will. God damn it, Stanley, he said. Quit joking around. You owe me a new monitor. I'm not joking, Ollie, I said. Why, Stan? He asked. He looked almost as bad as if he were going through it all himself. Marriages go through their ups and downs. You just have to make it through a rough patch. It'll get better. Anything beats the alternative. Oh, I said. I thought watching her screw the guy who does the maintenance for the condo complex out in the alley by the trash was as bad as it could get. So go ahead, tell me what's worse. You have to get rid of that 304, he said. Who knows what kind of disease she could give you? And I'm not talking about STDs. There are all kinds of scary bacteria around garbage. Whatever you do, don't have sex with her. So tell me, Ollie, how do I get this started? I asked. It's already done, he said. You hired me. I'll start drawing up papers. We'll outline a settlement that's fair to both of you. Then we have her served, and she gets a lawyer, and we all sit down and work something out. Most of these things never go to court. What do you mean fair to both of us? I asked. I've heard bad things about divorces. Well, Stan, you guys have been married for, what, 30 years? He asked. You'll probably have to split everything 50-50, no matter who did what. I looked at him like he was crazy. Screw that, I said. I thought you were supposed to be the crooked lawyer. I could get that kind of advice from the internet. Stop thinking about this like both of us are your friends. We need to come up with a way where she doesn't get a quarter. Stanley, he said, looking at me. Oh, all right, I said. She can have a quarter, but no more. Stanley, that's illegal, he said. Even in the worst cases, a judge would probably give her at least 40% of your assets. A quarter is only 25%. No way, I said. You've got your numbers wrong. I was talking about 25 cents, not 25% of the money I worked my bum off for all these years while she sat on her fat bum eating bonbons. Before I give her that much money, I'll just walk away. There is no way I'm going to pay her for screwing me over. He looked at me like it was the first time he'd ever seen me. Let's start looking for loopholes, I said. Can I legally sell my condo? Is her name on the paperwork from when you bought it? Nope, I said. Then I guess technically you could, he said, but if we did go to court over this, it could get really messy. Is there any law that says that two married people have to live together? I asked. No, he said. It is assumed that you would want to live with the person you marry, but there's no actual law that forces you to live with anyone. Is there any law that says I have to divorce her? I asked. No, there isn't, he said. But if you just disappeared, she could divorce you, and then you'd still have to give her half of your assets. Okay, what if the condo was all of our assets and I gave it to her? I asked. He shook his head and thought about it before answering. That was how we spent the remainder of the morning before breaking for lunch. My goal was to come up with a way to get Linda out of my life with as little of our assets as possible. It may have been wrong of me to want to do this to a woman I had lived with and loved for more than 30 years who would find herself homeless and destitute, but hey, I'm human. All the way to my car, I sang my new theme song, If Screwing You Over is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right. There were a few things that Ollie and I had discussed. Other than getting rid of Linda, we'd also talked about what to do with Dino. Pain and suffering were on the way for him too, but the timing had to be right. If I handled Dino before Linda, then she'd know something was going on. I had to move money around and make all the financial moves before I served Linda, and then Dino could be handled during the mop-up. On my way home, I transferred half of the money in both my savings and investment accounts into new accounts that didn't have Linda's name on them. I stopped by the plant to have Linda's name removed from my insurance policies and unlisted her from my retirement account. In our state, if I died, she'd still get the benefits unless I specifically excluded her in my will. The clerk in the accounting office asked me a bunch of questions about why I was doing this. I told him she'd started a new business and was making as much money as I was, so she didn't need it. There's no such thing as too much money, he said, giving me a smile that made me want to choke the life out of him right then and there. Then he handed me a form that Linda needed to sign. I couldn't believe she actually had to sign a form to be taken off my retirement account. I was the one who dragged my bum into that plant for 27 years. Linda had probably only been there a handful of times during our entire life together. I just smiled at him and took the form. I'd already decided how to get her to sign it. I had another form from Ollie that she needed to sign as well. That one put Linda's name on the condo as an owner. I'd given up the idea of throwing her out. I was going to leave instead. Since I wasn't giving her any money, she'd lose the condo and her credit would be ruined because she wouldn't be able to make the payments. Our condo was worth over $100,000. I intended to refinance it and take a loan for all of our equity out of it. Then I'd move out and leave Linda to her own devices. I was also going to make several questionable business moves that would lose the bulk of our cash in investments. I wouldn't start tapping into my retirement fund until I was 65, which would give me about 13 years. Hopefully, Linda would be dead by then, just in case the law decided to give her a part of it. As I drove back towards the condo, I was almost cheerful considering the past 24 hours I'd gone through. I was smart enough to realize that I was still in shock over what was happening to me and that soon, probably very soon, the reality of the situation would hit me, and I wasn't sure how I would handle it. After locking my car in the parking structure, I saw Dino looking at me. He had that little smile on his face that he always seemed to have. Only now, I knew why. "Nice car, Mr. Laurel," he said. I ignored him and kept walking. Before I got to the condo, I changed my mind. I turned and went in the other direction and knocked on Dahlia's door. She opened the door a crack after a few minutes. "I already told you I don't have anything that needs to be fixed or looked at. If the situation changes, I'll call you. Please just leave me alone," she said. "Sorry, Dahlia, I just wanted to make sure you were okay," I said. She opened the door wider. "No, I'm sorry, Mr. Laurel. I thought you were someone else. Would you like to come in?" "Not if it's going to be a bother," I said. "No, a friendly face is always welcome," she said. I walked into her apartment. She offered me a seat on her couch and told me to wait for a few minutes while she got dressed. As she walked away, I decided to do something to help cheer her up. I pulled out my ever-present iPhone and called the florist. I told the woman at the flower shop who I was. She remembered me because my orders were usually pretty big, and I often ordered flowers for Linda from her shop. I asked her if she had sent out Linda's flowers yet. She told me that I'd requested they be delivered later in the day, so they'd probably go out on the next delivery load. I asked her to deliver the flowers to a different condo in the same complex and to inform the driver that if he got them there within an hour, there'd be a big tip. Since the flowers were only addressed to the lady of the house, there was no need to change anything else. 10 minutes later, Dahlia came back into the living room. She seemed a little more relaxed but still not herself. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Where should I start?" she asked. "Sorry about before. I thought you were that idiot Dino. He's always hanging around my hallway. He knocks on the door at least once a day, claiming he needs to check for all kinds of things, but he never finds anything. When I ask other tenants, none of them have had their units checked for those things. I think he's just some kind of pervert." She looked at my face when she mentioned Dino's name. I guess my expression must have given something away. "You don't like him either, do you?" she asked. "I hate that a-hole," I said, harsher than I intended to. "I'm so sorry," she said. "So you know, huh?" I guess I should have said something, but I stumbled onto them by accident when I went to take out the trash a couple of weeks ago. They were so busy going at it that they didn't even notice me. I just left my trash bags outside the building. He's such a pig, and I can't believe Mrs. Laurel would. "Yeah, there are a lot of things I never thought would happen," I said. "You seem so calm," she said. "Only on the outside," I said. "Inside, I'm a bowl of mush. I'm just trying to keep moving so it doesn't really have a chance to affect me until it's over and done with." "When did you find out?" she asked. "Yesterday," I said sadly. "Nothing's been the same since. The whole world seems different." "So if you don't mind me asking," she said tentatively, "what are you going to do?" "I'm going for the big DW," I said. "Please don't say anything because I want it to be a surprise to both of them. But it's already in the works." "But don't you need to find out why she did it?" "Maybe she was forced." "Have you thought about what your life will be like?" she asked. "When my grandpa died, it was like my grandma died with him. That was over 5 years ago, and she's just now getting it together again. For a woman of her age, my grandma is beautiful, but she just couldn't imagine living without him." "What will you do?" she asked. "Nope," I said. There was no force used. She was the one who started things off, at least that's how it went yesterday when I saw them. I'll do fine alone. I'm young enough to start again if I need companionship. But actually, I'd be better off alone than forced to stay with a woman who doesn't really want to be with me or one who lies to me. "I'm sure she loves you," she said. "Maybe," I said. "Like a lot of women these days, she just wants something on the side. One of my girlfriends was engaged to a medical student. In about a year, he'll be done with school and get a great job with one of the hospitals. They've been together for over 4 years, but she hardly gets to see him. So on nights when she got really lonely, she, went to someone else. I don't know how, maybe someone told someone else, but anyway, he found out and broke off their engagement. She went crazy, stalking him and trying to explain that it meant nothing. He had to get a restraining order. Now he's dating a girl who works in the hospital's billing department. We heard that they might be getting married soon, and my girlfriend has never recovered. She still loves him and keeps trying all these stupid schemes to get him back. I guess these days, love and sex aren't necessarily connected." "They are to me," I said. "Me too," she said. "Unfortunately." "That's a good thing," I said. "You'll be much happier in the long run." "Oh, I'm sure of that," she said. "I have another year and a half of school left, and as of last night, I have no way of paying my bills once my savings run out. Excuse me, I'll be up the creek without a paddle." "What happened last night?" I asked. "Mr. Laurel," she said, "last night I went in to fill out my paperwork for the new owners of the company I work for. One of the owners took one look at me and decided he liked me or something. He made me an offer that I had to refuse. He was just gross, some greasy old guy in his 40s with a big gut, way too much hair on his chest, and a bunch of cheesy gold necklaces. When I said no, he pointed out that I could lose my job. I still said no. So that's why you were upset? I asked. I said, what did you do for a living? She looked down at the floor. No comment, she said. It's not something I want to talk about, but it's honest work and it's legal. I looked at my watch. We still had about 5 minutes before the florist's deadline was over. I'm hungry, I said. Mr. Laurel, I could make us something. She replied, I'm not the world's best cook, but I can make a lot of things. Actually, Dahlia, I was hoping that we could go out to lunch together. We could kind of share our misery and maybe put our heads together to find solutions to our mutual problems. I'd love that, she said. I really can't cook that well. I tried, but I just missed out on the AR gene. I laughed when she said that. It took years before Linda could cook too, I said. She almost poisoned me a couple of times, but I loved her so much that I didn't care. Just thinking back on it and remembering how much I loved Linda when we first got together hit me like someone had just stabbed me in the heart. I guess up to that point, I'd been only considering the witch Linda had become over the years and not the beautiful young woman that I fell in love with all those years ago. I'm sorry, she said. Did I say the wrong thing? No, Dahlia, I said. I was just remembering Linda the way she was. We ended up going to a small Italian restaurant just a few blocks away from the condo complex. We had a pleasant conversation that lifted some of the growing depression I felt about my life. I guess all those old sayings about misery loves company can be taken more than one way. We were both miserable, but being together lifted our spirits. Finally, at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I drove us home. Just as I pulled up to enter the parking structure, I saw a teenage boy drive in front of Dahlia's condo and hurried over to her door. We got there just as he was putting the flowers on her doorstep. Dahlia's face broke out in a smile. Let's see, she said. I know these aren't from my grandma, so who could they be from? She looked over at me and smiled. The delivery kid came back over to the door. Do you want to sign for these? He asked excitedly. Dahlia signed his clipboard and handed it back to him. Seems to me I heard something about a tip, he said. Seems to me it was supposed to be a big one too. What's the biggest tip you've ever gotten? I asked. $2,000, said the kid. You're a lying sack of, I started, causing Dahlia to laugh. Okay, my biggest tip so far was $20, he said. I was going to give you 50, I said, but you were supposed to have these here 2 hours ago. The tip was if you'd gotten the flowers here within an hour of me getting off the phone with your boss. Damn it, he said. That was why she put your flowers in the back of the truck. They were supposed to have been delivered first, and that's why you didn't get your tip. His face immediately went into sick puppy mode. But look at it this way, you got something far more valuable than money. You got experience. You learned the wrong way to handle the job. Now, in the future, you'll do things in a better and more organized manner. Experience is a good teacher. Wow, thanks, mister, he said sadly. I'll run right over to Best Buy and see how many Xbox games I can buy with experience. Maybe I can take my girlfriend out using my experience. You have a happy Valentine's Day, I said. Dahlia was smiling at me and sticking her lip out too. Oh, all right, I said, but I'm still not giving you the 50. I gave him $20, and both he and Dahlia were happy. I actually felt good too. Dahlia had kissed me on the cheek and told me I'd made her Valentine's Day a happy one. I stepped back into my condo at 3:15. Linda was there, and she was pissed. She looked at me when I came in. Where were you? She asked. Linda, I told you where I was going, I said. I have some papers that you need to sign. Why do I need to sign papers? She asked. Because, Linda, I'm going to die someday, I said. No, you're not, she smirked. You're going to live forever the way you run and work out. Your body is like some kind of machine. Linda, healthy men drop dead every day from heart attacks or cancer. They get into car accidents and all sorts of things. When I bought this condo, I signed the papers alone. I'm updating my will and noticed that your name isn't on the documents for the condo. If something did happen to me, they could throw you out of here and resell the place, or you wouldn't be able to sell it if you needed any money for medical bills or any other reason. You actually think about what would happen to me if you... She began, honey, nothing will ever happen to you because I would never let it. We argue sometimes, and most of the time it's about really stupid things, but Stanley, you amaze me sometimes. You really do love me, don't you? You'd be surprised by the amount of love I have for you, Linda, I said. I was sure that negative numbers couldn't go that far below zero without a special calculator. I stuck the papers on the desk, and Linda, as I figured, signed them all, including the one from the plan I had tucked in between the sheets of the condo papers. Linda had just made herself responsible for paying off the loan I'd taken against our equity in the condo and also signed herself out of receiving any money from my retirement plan. She'd only signed them so she could get on with her next set of questions. "So, Stanley, do you remember what I told you this morning?" she asked. "Oh," I said, "Linda, give me a few minutes. I need to go into the office." I went into our home office and opened up Microsoft Publisher on our computer. I looked through the greeting card templates and made Linda a Valentine's Day card. I made sure to spell her name wrong to really piss her off. A few minutes later, I went back into the living room with the biggest, cheesiest smile I could muster and handed her the card. "Happy Valentine's Day, honey," I said. She had the same expression on her face that she'd have had if she had bitten into a fried sandwich. Her mouth dropped open, and she looked at me with a mixture of anger and confusion. "Who is Lindy?" she asked. "You see, that's part of the problem," I said. 5 minutes ago, you were sure that I loved you, and now, because my old fingers hit the wrong keys, you're angry. Screw this. That's why I hate Valentine's Day and all those other Hallmark holidays. A guy just can't win." I walked into the bedroom and slammed the door behind me. I got into bed to take a nap, fighting the urge to laugh. A few minutes after I got into bed, Linda cracked the door and looked at me. As soon as she made sure that I was asleep, she went back into the living room and I heard her on the phone. "No, he hasn't given me anything yet," she said. "Well, wait a minute, he did give me a half-hearted Valentine's Day card that looked like he did it in crayon. He even spelled my name wrong." "What?" "Hell no, I didn't get any flowers, and he hasn't mentioned the restaurant." "Are you sure your boss said he got us a reservation?" "What do you mean he might be testing me?" "Oh, I get it. He's trying to get me all pissed off, and then he'll just bring out my gifts." "Okay, two can play at that game." A few minutes later, the door opened and Linda got into bed with me. She put her arm around me and started to kiss me. I was horrified, but I wasn't going to show it. I rolled over in the opposite direction and mumbled, "Leave me alone. I'm tired." She actually sat up in bed. "Stanley, are you okay?" She looked at me like she actually cared. Maybe her mind was just working, I thought. "There's something wrong here," she said. "This makes twice you've turned down sex." "Linda, over the past month or so since we started arguing about it, and you told me it would be a long time until we had sex again, I've started to focus on different things," I said. "There are certain things I want to do before I die, and I need to start on the list. I guess I overdid the run this morning, so I'm really tired." Her eyes got really big, and she stared at me. "Stanley, is there something I should know?" she asked. "Have you been to the doctor lately? What is on your list? Maybe I could help you with some of them. How long do we have?" Then it hit me, the silly witch thought that I was dying and had made a list. She came back in a couple of times during the evening. "Stanley, you don't want to go out for dinner or anything, do you?" she asked once. "Tired," I said. "Stanley, honey, do you remember what day it is?" she asked. "It's Valentine's Day, and it's almost over." "Thank God," I said. "Now things can get back to normal." "Stanley, are we doing anything for Valentine's Day?" she asked, exasperated. "I already gave you a card, didn't I?" I said. She slammed the door so hard the whole building shook. She came back to bed at about midnight, wearing a nightgown so thick I thought she was wearing armor. She stayed as far from me as the bed's dimensions would allow and tried to pull all of the blankets off of me. She was so angry I thought she was going to spontaneously combust. It was all I could do not to laugh. I woke up early the next morning and got ready to go out for a run again. While I was in the kitchen grabbing a quick pre-run snack, Linda marched into the room. "Good morning, honey," I said cheerfully. "Stanley, where's my bracelet?" she screamed. "What happened to the restaurant and my goddamn flowers?" "Linda, are you high?" I asked her. "What are you talking about?" "Someone told me that you'd gone into the jewelry shop and bought me a bracelet for Valentine's Day and got us a reservation at my favorite restaurant," she said. "But all you got me was that dumbass homemade card." I pretended that I was hurt and looked up at her. "At least I put some effort into the card, Linda," I said. "What did you give me?" I tried to give you what you're always begging for, she said. What? I asked. Let me get this straight. I'm supposed to spend almost $3,000 on a brand new diamond-encrusted bracelet, pay another $200 for the custom inscription on the back, drop at least $300 for dinner at that snooty French restaurant that I don't even like, and then still spend $100 or so on fresh flowers? I'm buying you all kinds of fresh and new things, and you want to give me a 50-year-old glory hole that doesn't cost you a thing? How is that fair? Her mouth was open again, but she didn't know what to say. Linda, I'm old enough to realize that there's more to life than sex.